Hi.
Hi, everybody. I am Mariana, and I am here with Julie Johnson, the author of Wind Weaver.
Hi.
And we have read Wind Weaver for Betty's Book Club this month, and we're very excited to be here with her. I don't know. Yeah, we already have people joining, so I'll just let you introduce yourself.
Awesome. Like she said, I'm Julie Johnson. I wrote The Wind Weaver and the whole trilogy. I have the big giant book covers behind me. You can see. And I'm
You're
so
beautiful.
excited. Thank you. I'm so excited that this trilogy is coming to Brazil, and really just so thankful that you guys have been so enthusiastic and supportive already. I know that book one hasn't even been out that long, but it's been awesome so far. So thank you.
Book one was released in April,
Yeah.
and we already have it in Brazil so
Mm,
soon.
yeah.
And I'm very hopeful for the second one to come soon because that's not how it usually works.
I know.
Usually takes a long time for us to get it. So I
The
don't know what's the
translation takes.
process, but
Yeah.
that was fast.
It is. This series, it's funny because I wrote book one so many years ago. It feels to me that it's been like I'm waiting forever. But the plan from the way my agents explained it, they were like, we're hoping to get as many of the languages because it's sold in 20 languages. And they were
Oh,
like, we're
wow.
hoping to get as many as we can simultaneous so that readers in different countries don't have to wait and have, a year or 2 years of being like, we want that book and where is it? And lagging behind the US. So I'm so glad that it's working out that way.
Me too. Me too. I'm always like texting the editors in Brazil. I'm like, when is this book coming? When is this coming? And they're like, it takes time. It takes time. But this one was really fast. And I hope we get it simultaneously for the second one.
I hope so.
Yeah. I finished your book recently because I was like trying to get it fresh in my mind because I
Yeah,
know I was gonna see it. So I don't want to get it. I wanted to get
yeah.
it fresh in my mind. And after finishing the first one, I'm like, I need the second one.
Well, I already finished writing the whole trilogy. So for me,
You finished all three?
mm, so
Oh, wow.
I was like, hopefully that means that it won't be a year between releases, but my US publisher was like, no, we're still going to do a year. So I don't know. I don't
I
know.
guess they have to. Like, I don't know what's the deal with the whole process between writing a book and releasing it. But I feel like if you do release all three, some people might look at it. Yeah, I'll read it another time. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's just
It gives
it
it
has a
time
different
to
effect.
build, I guess, if they wait. And so the hardcover's out and then the paperback has to come out, so there's all these different steps, but it's
And you get that feeling in us like we need the second one and we get a fan base building up.
I guess it makes sense. All decisions above my pay grade. If it was up to me, I would be like, okay, you can have the second book right now. But
That is really nice of you. It's nice that you think about the readers. That is really
I've
nice.
been a reader and I've been on the other side of it and been
Yes.
like, I'm dying to know what happened.
We do have a cliffhanger at the end of your book, but it's not like
It's
this
not bad.
giant thank you because it wasn't that bad.
I wanted it to feel like it was a complete story in the sense that I guess when I looked at the series, when I was plotting the whole thing out, I was like, I want book one to have a full arc, and then I want book two to have its own arc and book three to have an arc. And I want all of them to kind of stack and build on each other and have the whole series, the trilogy has kind of a character arc. But I really wanted them each to feel like very different and kind of like separate
Mhm.
stories. I didn't ever want it to feel repetitive or that like I will warn you, there is a big cliffhanger at the end of number two, but everyone can handle it because I was gentle on you in book one. So
Yes. I have to get on your ARC list. I
yeah.
have to I have to ask you how I do to get in there because I've never been able to get an ARC, but if you do have a list, I will sign up for the ARC.
Hopefully I'll be able to send them out soon. I don't know. They tell me like my publisher emails me and they're like, arcs are going out now. And I'm like, okay. Again,
Because
I
you
know
already
none of the
finished
decisions.
everything, so you're, like, just
Yeah,
waiting.
yeah. I'm just
Well
always refreshing email, checking for news, but
well, that I feel like this is a good way to go because you're not feeling pressured to write. You did it in your own time, and then you don't have this burden or this, like, heavy weight on you. So
it's
you
so
kind
good.
of, like, enjoy the process of, like, getting the books released, and then you could just enjoy, like, doing book tours. I
Yeah.
don't know if you're gonna do them, but
I have one in like a kind of a mini one in France and Germany coming up,
Oh,
which will be
wow.
fun. Yeah, and
That's really cool.
I was supposed to add Portugal, which would have been so fun, but my
Yeah.
brother's actually he and his wife are having a baby, and so they're in California, so I was like, "I'm cutting it too close if I can't I gotta meet the baby nephew," so I couldn't add,
Priorities.
but,
Yes.
I'll go back maybe for book 2, but, I'm like, twist my arm, I always love to travel, so it's, you
Well,
know.
I hope you can get to Brazil someday and
Oh,
visit. There is a nice event next year. It's called Bienal.
I've
It's
heard
like
of this.
the that's I mean, I've never seen anything like it. I haven't been to BookCon. I'll
Yeah,
try to get a ticket to go to that one, but I've been to a couple of events here in the US, but nothing ever compared
yeah.
to Bienal. It's like it's giant. And your book was like it was very hyped up at Bienal.
Oh,
It
that's
it was like everybody was buying your book. That was like everybody's list of shopping lists. Your
nice.
book was there. So
That's good to know.
that was yeah, that was a big so I think maybe you could try to get it in on your list
Would be
to
fun.
go for the
I
second
would
one.
love to visit. I've heard nothing but everyone who visits has the most amazing things to say, so I would love to.
We're good people. We're very warm-hearted, so I'm sure they will give you a lot of love.
Well, I have the inside scoop. My agents being they're both Brazilian, so they always tell me, "You have to come visit."
Yeah, everybody's on the comments. Yes, come
Yeah,
to Brazil. That's like the most of the comments. Come to
love it.
Brazil. I was reading through your story. I see that Wind Weaver was, I don't know if it was your first fantasy because I know you have a witch series.
Yeah.
That one is in Salem.
That one's in Salem. It's
Yeah.
not so Windweaver is kind of my first ever full, like, high fantasy set in a
Uh-huh.
different world. I wrote, for about 10 years, I've been writing contemporary romance that with like, with my witchy series, it has, like, a touch of, magical in the background, but it's really not there's no
Mhm.
one doing magic. It's more that there's kind of it's part of the setting and part of the background in the city because Salem is such a witchy city, but
Yeah.
there's not really the same level of world building or, you know, magic that you'd see in Windweaver. So this was a real departure for me, but a very fun one.
You have another series. It's you have a romance series placed in Boston, and then I was
Yeah.
like, is she local to New England? Because I'm in Connecticut, so I was like,
Yeah.
I know these places, and I saw that you grew up in New England, so
Yeah.
you're based in your
Massachusetts.
stories.
Yep. Born and raised.
That's really nice. It's nice to see like towns that
Yeah.
I've been.
I love New England. I honestly, it's like, in my opinion, I know I'm biased, but the best place to live.
I I personally don't love it here because of the weather. Even though you
Oh,
get 4 seasons, I'd rather go to a warmer
yeah.
state, but I just well, it's good. It's beautiful. You see all the 4 seasons. It's
That's true. As a
yeah,
writer, I love, like, those cold, dreary days because 'cause they're great for just hibernating and in my writing cave, like, getting good words in, but if
that
you
makes
don't like
sense.
the cold, if you don't like the snow, it's tough.
When We Were was your first fantasy books. You've
It
been I think you wrote more than 20 books already, right?
Yes, and so this was kind of, something I'd been wanting to switch over and write fantasy for a long time. I love reading fantasy, I love fantasy movies, I've always toyed with the idea, but for me, having spent so long writing contemporary romance, it felt very, like, risky in a way to be like, "Oh my gosh, are my existing readers are they gonna be mad at me and be like, 'Julie, what are you doing? Why are you suddenly writing' you've been writing rom-coms and now you're writing this high fantasy world that" I was worried they wouldn't connect with it, that they wouldn't follow me, from make that jump with me, and that was worrisome. Also, just do I take 6 months or 8 months or a year and, give myself the shot to write this very different kind of book? And then what if nobody wants it? I was like, that's a risk in itself. But at a certain point, I was like, I'm just going to try. I'm just going to see what happens, see if I can even get the book written. And my agents are amazing angels because I was like, they're going to kill me if I just email them and I'm like,
I wanna
surprise,
switch genres
I'm
now.
switching genres. Here's a fantasy book. And bless them, they were wonderful and so, so supportive and held my hand through the whole process. So,
You might not have the same audience, but you're creating a new audience, and
that's
this new audience could even be bigger than the first one. So,
so
because
true.
romantasy is so high right now, like everybody wants to read romantasy. It gets viral now. Everybody wants to read it. So,
So
and
popular. Yeah.
I met you through Wind Weaver, but
Yeah.
I have never heard about the other romance books, but this
Yeah.
one because this is in my bubble. So
Yeah.
I read romantasy. So
Yeah.
I'm really glad you took a shot. It's the first book in a series. It's your
Yeah.
first romantasy book. So I think you did great. So I
Thank
can't
you.
wait for book 2. I kind of have a feeling of what's going to happen in book 2,
Ooh.
following but
Yeah.
following the line of what, like, taking under consideration, because it's really hard when you read so many of the romantasy books, you
Mm.
kind of, like, you don't get tricked by the first person that appears. It's like that's the like
Everyone's, like, triggered by, "I can't
yeah,
fall for the first love
yeah,
interest." Yeah.
but he's not blonde, so
That's true, that's
that's the
true.
I was like, "Well, he's not blonde, we might be
Hard
okay."
to say, hard to say. I think that for me, when I sat down to write this series in particular, and I was thinking about, the romantic aspects of it, I was also thinking about, like, I don't wanna get, like, spoilery in any way, but, like, Rhea has her relationships with Penn and Soren, but Penn and
Mhm.
Soren also have a relationship with each other that's actually been a lot longer. They've known each other basically since Penn was, like, 10 years old and showed up at Soren's kingdom. So, like, 100 years, these 2 men have been in each other's lives. They have a very complicated past and history, and it's something that's so fun for me to play with as the writer, to just bring in, you know, it's never going to be just a simple love triangle. It's never going to be just about her. There's a whole lot
Mhm.
of other factors that are swirling around the two of them from their old, romance with like the previous Wind Weaver, from just like the tension of both being from different kingdoms, and then from the powers themselves, like fire and water. They're never going to see eye to eye in like a
Yes.
lot of things. So there's a lot of different factors that will go into complicating their relationship as the two guys moving forward too, which is it's just fun to play with as the writer, but expect it to get just messier and messier is all I'll
I'm
say.
thinking we will only know on book 3. That's the feeling I'm getting. I will prepare my heart.
Book 2 is, there's a reason the cover is, like, crashing waves and tumultuous. That's what I said I wanted the cover art to capture, that it's, like, everything is changing and in flux and, like, stormy. So, I think the cover artist did a great job capturing that
Oh,
emotion, like
they did a good job on both covers. They're
yes,
beautiful, and I've
so
heard
good.
people who bought the book just because of the cover. They're like, "Well, the cover was so beautiful, I bought it," and they loved the
It's
book. They're like, "Perfect.
gorgeous.
It's a good
I
combo."
I was so nervous about it because, you don't have a ton of control always. It depends on your publisher. You can express certain things that you want. And I told them that I really wanted, certain concepts, and they absolutely knocked it out of the park with book 1 and then again with book 2. So I'm very, very lucky.
One of the questions is about the cover. We see that you have a phoenix in
Mm,
both covers,
mhm.
and we wanna know if that will be a part of the story in some way. I feel like maybe the phoenix could be a symbolic, like, mention to the whole.
When I sat down and brainstormed cover ideas, one of the ideas that I said was that you could do a more symbolic cover, which is what we kind of ended up going with, where originally I pitched this as 4 books, 1 book for each element. It ended up selling as a trilogy. So when I thought of covers originally, I was like, oh, that's easy. 4 elements, 4 covers, 1 with each element on it. But then once you went from 4 to 3, we were thinking about ways that we could introduce all the different elements in only 3 books. So in book 1, you
Mm.
have like fire and air kind of being together. Book 2, you have more water influence. Book 3, maybe earth. So the bird necessarily is, I like to think of it, perhaps the bird is Rhea, and whatever element is in the background and really kind of coming through in the art is a central focus of that story. And that, you know, each book, she kind of has different relationships with like different elements, not necessarily saying that they're romantic or not, just that that element is a key part of the story. So, I think people see the sea spinner and they're immediately like, oh, Soren's endgame, but it doesn't necessarily mean anything. It's just that he's going to be a bigger role in the story. And same for book 3. I can't share the title yet, but that one also could be in reference to a different element.
That's very exciting. I read the book and I was like, as soon as they mentioned that the earth element was not present, I was like, I need to see it. There
Yeah,
was a question our friend from the book club sent. She asked, is the earth guardian someone we have already met in the first book?
I think I could tell you that. No.
Okay, so we haven't met him yet. And another
He
question
or
was,
she.
were there any actions from the earth remnant in book one? Did something happen that it was the earth remnant,
I
but
don't
we
know,
don't know?
guys. I feel like there might have been some kind of rumblings that could have maybe been hints that Earth is already
Interesting.
so Earth, maybe I would guess I'll amend my previous answer. Earth was present in a way in book one, if you think about
That is very cool.
hmm.
I can't wait to see it.
I'm glad people picked up on that. As I was writing it, I was like, okay,
Yeah.
let's see how many people.
Another question was, I think you already answered it. Is there a hidden detail in the first book that you bet almost no one noticed, but that will become important later on?
Yeah, there we go. That counts.
So I think that's the one. I think it's very interesting. And another question I had about your, because I saw a name. It's Ethnician. I was like,
Yeah.
that's a really cool name, but I didn't
Mhm.
quite understand what's his role in the whole story. But as like researching about the character, I wanted to see
Mhm.
more about him. But I think there's still more to come, like his reasons and all that for him to do what he does.
Yes.
And I see that that name is from Welsh mythology,
Yeah.
and he is a big villain in the Welsh mythology. So I was like, is he going
You
to
did
be
your
like,
research. Yeah.
is he really big in the next two books?
Yeah, I will say that I took a lot of inspiration for The Wind Weaver and for the whole trilogy from Welsh mythology. The Rhea, her name is based on kind of Rhiannon, which is she's a Welsh or Celtic goddess. And in the mythology, she's like the goddess of horses and also sometimes associated with birds, but also with wind in certain, you know,
Cool.
and so the name Rhea is short in my mind for Rhiannon. So even though it's not like a direct inspiration from the myth, it is in a way like even Penn's name, which a lot of people hate, the name Pendafire, it's also based on the name from the myth. So in the myth, it's even worse. It's Pendafig. Okay. So be
Oh,
happy I did
okay.
not make it Pendafig, which would have been worse, I think.
I thank you for not
Yeah,
using Pendafig.
Pendafig.
That
But
would be a
a lot,
turn off. Like
yeah,
Pendafig
no.
came and hugged me from behind.
Pen to
I'll be
Fig.
like,
Yeah.
oh,
So I mostly just call him Pen, but the name was meant to be a tie back to the myth and the original myth. Ifnesian name from the myth, the kingdoms like Anwen as a kingdom, that's a huge name from mythology. Lear as the kingdom, mythology, David, like all of these places are essentially drawn from the myths. And so it's fun, like to kind of
that's
draw from that.
interesting. I'll
Yeah.
do some research
Yeah.
afterwards.
You might
I'll
find
research
accidental
names and I want to see if I can find
who's
something about the
important.
next books. Is there a character in the book that you consider most similar to yourself or who was inspired by people from your own life?
Oh, that's a really good question. I don't know that I necessarily have anyone that I fully develop on someone that I know or on myself, but I feel like in all of my characters, no matter whether I'm writing this series or any of my previous, I feel like bits and pieces of people that I know and people that I've met always work their way in. You know, it's the same with like places that I've been. There's a lot of places that I see the geography or the architecture and I'm like, that's going in a book, you know? And it's one of my favorite things about traveling, right? You meet so many different people and you can you can borrow their characteristics and kind of put them to a character. I think, you know, I was a psychology major, and so I'm always thinking about like the inner workings of how people think, why they do what they do. With the four remnant characters, their personalities, I didn't necessarily borrow from as much because I felt like when I was shaping them, I used their elements so much to decide how they would act, how they would talk, how they would move, how they would
That's
interact with
very
each other.
interesting.
Yeah, so it's like Penn, he to me, when I was making him, I was like, what would a person who's like literally fire be like? And they're going to be, you know, you get too close, you're going to get scorched. You're like a little bit that fiery side to him. Versus Rhea, I was like, she's much more gentle and much more like life-giving, like air, but she can also have like a kind of hurricane force side to her. Soren, he's like very playful and frothy and light, like a wave, but also
I
has
love
these like
him.
deep undercurrents to him too, like the ocean. So I tried to like, instead of, I guess, relaying so much on like people that I knew in real life, especially for the main characters in this particular series, I definitely was like, okay, we're going to focus on the elements and how their power specifically makes their characters, if that makes sense.
That is very interesting. I love that you based the magical system into basic, like in elemental magical systems. I love them. And I don't read them as much. It's usually based in so many other things, but I love to see like elements, earth, fire, and water. And I feel like that's cool. It is simple, but it
Mhm.
is not. It's like you could play with it. Penn and Soren have this relationship because of their elements.
Yeah.
So, and they mentioned that Rhea might have the same situation with the person who holds the earth element. So
Mhm.
it is, you really are basing their personalities into their elements. So can we expect the same relationship with Rhea and the earth remnant?
In a way, sometimes you could I think of them as, I always call them, whether they're compatible or they're foils of each other. So they're either like compatible or they're butting heads. And so for each element, it's kind of different, right? Like fire and water are total opposites. But when I think of air and earth, they're not as quite as opposite, like as, you can think of them as opposites in a way, but also the nature of earth is very much different from the nature of like fire, for instance. It's very, all growing things are earth, so maybe earthquakes and rock slides and that very destructive part, but there's also a really like gentle and wonderful and flowers and blooms and different kind of side to earth. So it will be interesting for people to see, I guess, how they react seeing that kind of a character meeting Rhea. And I don't want to give too much away, but yeah, it's
I
fun
have a
to
lot of
see.
theories right now.
It's fun to see how they all kind of interact. And like you were saying with the elemental magic a little bit, it is so simple, like right off the bat as like a magical system. But as the books go on and they kind of start to learn how to use their powers in combo with each other, it can get, like you said, like what seems simple suddenly is, air on its own is just one thing, but then you add air and fire together and you use them as magic. That is a whole different thing. So that is something to look forward to in later books. The magic gets more complex and Rhea gets better at it, which is also fun.
I like, now I'm inclined to think maybe we will have this earth person into the love triangle too, and it won't be a triangle, it will be
A
a
love square.
square,
I don't
a
know.
love square. That would be really cool.
It could be you haven't even met the love interest yet. I don't know.
Oh my goodness. I won't be able to stop thinking about it now. I can't live now. I have to know.
You will meet Earth in book 2. You will meet.
Okay.
So
That's good. That's good. That's something. So we'll
that's
we'll meet
something to
Earth.
go on.
I
Never know
had
what to
plans in my
expect.
mind for book 2. I was like, I know what's gonna happen is this and this, because we know how it is. It's never the first person, it's the second person. But now you're saying that we haven't met him yet. So
No, I
okay.
didn't say that. I said maybe.
Maybe. Okay.
Maybe you have.
I'm very excited for the next book. Very, very excited.
I can't wait to
So
talk to everyone about it because I'm like, having finished all 3 of them, I'm just like drowning in spoilers over
you
here
can't say
because
anything.
I can't say anything. And no one's even read the 3rd book except my mom, who reads all my books first. She's the only one I trust to be like brutally honest with me. And my agents are like, we know you're done with it and you should just share it. And I'm like, well, I have to see that my mom likes it first. And then so
That's
she liked it
really
though.
sweet. Pen and Rhea share a very intense connection. They can
So.
sense and fight each other, and by the end, Rhea also seems to have the same connection with Soren. So the question is, why didn't she just feel it at first sight? Does it need to be there's an emotional connection between them before it starts? Because she would be able to find the Earth person if that was just a standard thing, like you're a remnant and then you feel it.
So I think Penn talks a little bit about this to her. They have kind of a conversation after she meets Soren for the first time, and he kind of goes and gets her, and they're back together, and they have kind of what I think is a very pivotal conversation in the book, where she basically, rightfully so, calls him out for kind of withholding a lot and not giving her any information. And she's like, you call Soren your enemy, but I learned more in an hour of his company than I have from you in the whole time we've known each other. And Penn, who has, his own reasons for being Penn and his own baggage, and he's dealing with his own, problems with repressing his emotions and PTSD from being a soldier. And he's got, Penn has issues of his own. But I think it's the first time he realizes that he has been kind of shutting Rhea down so much, and is, but he's angry in that moment. And he kind of, as much as he wants to, open up to her, it's just his nature. He's very closed off. But it does spark something in him that he realizes he does need to inform her about more of their connection. And there's a scene after that where he teaches her about the remnant bond for the first time. And he says it's easier at the beginning, and he holds her hands and says, with a tactile connection, it's easier to establish. And he admits that he can feel her emotions already, but she can't feel his. So it's kind of one of those things that the more you do it, the stronger that bond grows, and then the more, intense that connection gets. So the bonds continue to be explored more and more in the later books, and those connections, as they get even stronger, it ties into how they can use their magic together. It ties into how they can communicate. It ties into everything. So it will get explained why they can't just follow it to Earth. I think it's something that has to be established when you meet the person and then built on. So for Soren, she only had that very brief meeting with him, and then she doesn't see him again in person until the very end. And then that second, after the battle, that's when she kind of reaches in and she feels it for the first time, that connection to him.
It has to be something accepted.
Kind of accepted, kind of, just something that each of them has their own kind of magical signature. And, when she kind of goes into her magic, she visualizes it as almost like an inner storm that she sees inside her. And she pictures these swirling clouds, but there's this kind of eye of the storm, like a calm center of her magic that she goes when she focuses and when she needs to, kind of kick into gear and draw on her magic. And for the first time she feels Penn, she describes feeling she feels like a current of warmth, kind of inside her, and she follows it, and then she realizes it's Penn. And then she does the same thing where she kind of has to reach inside her, and she senses a different kind of a signature. Soren's magic feels very different from Penn's. It's cool and crisp, and it's more like water. And so
and it's soothing.
Yeah, it's soothing. And so if you don't know what Earth would feel like because you've never met them, you couldn't really follow that thread. It's something that you have to kind of have met the person and established kind of what their magic feels like, what they feel like, before it kind of grows. Once Earth enters the picture, that's a big question mark in book one. You don't know, have there been, is she or he the original Earth, or have they been, just like Rhea, are they just the latest incarnation of Earth?
Why are they still hidden? Why?
Where are they?
Yeah, where are they? That's very interesting. And there was a question about POVs for the next book. Do you think you could give us if we're going to have a Soren POV or a Penn POV, or it's just going to be Rhea's POV?
It's going to be
for the
Rhea.
Second book.
Rhea is the whole trilogy is just Rhea, but
okay,
I may write some novellas that are different POVs that I could either set prequel or kind of in between or sequel. So I'm working on those because now I'm done with the main story. I kind of have all this time to play around, and but for me, when I sat down to write it, I always saw this story as Rhea's story. And it's really as much as it's about all of these characters and the whole, there were a lot of characters in book one, but by book two, it doubles easily. And then by book three, there were so many characters. When I was writing the grand finale, I was like, oh my God, why did I do this to myself? There's 50 characters in this scene.
Oh my goodness.
It's crazy. But I think that for me, just the story was always through Rhea's eyes, the way I saw it in my mind. And it just played out for me that way. that doesn't mean I'll not ever write in other voices, but for the main trilogy.
I love the side characters
Oh, yeah.
too.
Yeah.
And you did something to us at the end of this book, and I was like, "What?"
Oh,
I
I
was
know.
like, "Why?" And that was I don't know, I care so much for these side characters, like their life, what's happening. It's not always that you feel this connection with side characters. It has
Yeah.
to be well done. So you did it very well because I
Thank
really
you.
felt the pain. Even though I only met these characters, I was like, "Oh my god, this is like so devastating."
I
And
know.
I can't wait to see in book 2 what's going to happen to these people. I
Ooh.
was like,
It's hard. It's, for me, I feel like when you're writing about war and fantasy, you have to have real repercussions in battles where real characters do die and they don't all make it. And as hard as it is for me writing it, like I write it, I'm just like, like the whole
and
time.
after everything we experienced, like, firsthand their family and everything,
I
we're like,
know.
"What?"
I'm like, why am I doing this to myself? But I do feel that it's really necessary if you're writing about war or battles that, it's just not realistic that nobody would die.
Yeah.
So I wish I could tell you that everyone makes it to the end of the trilogy, but no.
I know. I'm all about the devastation as well.
Yeah,
I mean, I'm
emotional damage.
sad, but I like the emotion of damage. I'm like, "Oh, yeah, I'm devastated, 5 stars." Like,
5 stars.
I
Just
needed
kill me
therapy,
again.
5
Yeah,
stars. Yes, good. I'm, like, crying my eyes out, 5 stars.
that's the rating scale. How
Yes,
many boxes of tissues you needed is like, oh, it's 5
yes. Oh,
stars.
yeah, it made me suffer. Amazing. A
Yeah.
million stars. So,
Well, you're gonna
I'm
love book 2.
oh, is that good or bad? How many pages could you tell us, like, how many
Book 2 is
pages?
a little bit shorter than book 1, only by, like, 10 or 15 pages. It's, like,
Mhm,
almost exactly the same length. I think book 1 was, like, 544 pages, and I just went through book 2 for copy edits and stuff, and it was, like,
mhm.
534 pages or something, so it's almost the exact same. Book 3 is long. I'm worried about
It's
it.
just that 50 characters, I was like, "How
Yeah,
long is it gonna
'cause
be? Because you just gotta finish, like, get
she's
the end for everybody."
yeah, so I'm working on, like, cutting that down, and it's not going well. So I'm just gonna eventually just send it to my editor and be like, if I need to make cuts, I'll make cuts, but I don't want it to be like a 700-page book, but at the same time, if it needs to be, it needs to be. Like I said, I wanted to write 4, and it sold as 3, so they did know that going in, that I had enough story that I'd plotted out for 4 books, but I moved it into 3, which I actually in the end think made for a much, like, better, tighter story once I look at the whole series than dragging it out. I'm happy that it's 3 in the end on the other side of it, but when I first sat down to write book 3, I was like, "How am I gonna do this?"
I love trilogies.
Yeah,
I feel like trilogies are the perfect number. I mean, I
it is.
love a big series, I
Yeah.
do.
I'm, like, so intimidated when I see a series that's so long. I'm like,
Yeah.
"I don't have the time. I have commitment issues. I can't do
Yeah.
this." Like, I can't
Like, what did they have to say that it's so many
so many
books?
books, but
Yeah.
once you're in it, you're like, "I can't stop. I gotta go through. I gotta see it through. Gotta see it to the end." But
That's why I love trilogies.
yes, that was the publisher's argument for 3 instead of 4. They were like, "Readers are trained to expect trilogies. They will want it to be a trilogy, and if you're gonna do 4, then it's like you might as well do 5." And I was like, at that point, I was like, "3 is the right answer. It's the magic
Perfect.
number. We're gonna do 3."
I
So,
agree. I love trilogies because you start, you finish in a week, you
yeah.
can read 3 and you're
Exactly.
happy.
I've never written a series longer than 3 books. Most of my previous work, they're all standalones that are interconnected. So they're in the same series and it's all like different couples of the same friend group. And so
The
like
one
the
in Boston, right?
Boston and my Salem one, the Witchy series. So like the main characters show up again, but they're in the background as, side
Mhm.
characters now. So I've only got one other series that I did that's a trilogy that's like a royal romance trilogy, but that one was still like contemporary setting. It's kind of like I always say it's like if um the Princess Diaries was rated R is like always how I describe that series, but it's like easier in a way to even though it's castles and ball gowns, it's in this world, it's
Mhm.
you don't have to explain everything. There isn't the high fantasy level that there was.
World building
Yes.
and
the world building. So just a different, like entirely different writing process.
I feel like the world building for fantasy is what takes most of the books. And
Mhm.
you did it very well in the first book. And I still have a lot of things that I want to learn about in book 2, but I feel
Yeah.
like you have space to do it in a trilogy. And it doesn't feel like you've been reading it forever.
It's a
Too
good
many cliffhangers. We
The
can't live
cliffhangers
like
kill
that.
you, especially knowing that, like, with traditional publishing, when I was indie publishing, it was like I could crank out books, it didn't matter, but waiting a year between releases, if there's, like, 5 books, then it's 5 years that it takes
Yeah.
for that story to I can't imagine that.
Right now, the romantasy industry, it's growing. So
Yeah.
we have so many first books. And
Mhm.
you have a first book of like this big series. And I always tell myself, I'm not going to read the first book.
Not
I'm only going
starting
to
it.
read completed series. And that never happens
I
because a
know.
book comes out and we want to read it. And then if it's
Uh,
5 books, we're waiting for 5, 6 years,
the
sometimes more.
struggle. I think, like, for writers too, because, like, I'm sitting here and I'm like, "What can I talk about that's not a spoiler?" You know, like, it's trying to remember a book, obviously, remember the one we wrote, but I wrote it, 4 years ago at this point, which is
Yeah.
nuts,
Like,
but
where do I stop?
yes. Oh, they haven't
Mhm.
met that character yet, or, "Oh, that
Yeah.
hasn't happened yet." So all those things that when you go to say anything, you're like, "Spoiler."
Yeah, you mentioned that your publisher would go back and say, "Oh, you should cut this." So I'm wondering if there is anything from book 1 from Windweaver that you cut, and that now you look back and you think you shouldn't have cut it.
I don't think I cut. I actually think with Windweaver, I added words. Um, when I first wrote it, I didn't have the scenes with, um, the book that Soren gives Rhea and all of this, like, side notes that when I first submitted the book and it sold, I didn't have that. And then on my second kind of read, I talked to my editor and I was like, "I wanna figure out a way that Soren can have more of a presence and be there even though he's not there." And so we came up with kind of this book idea that he gives to the book, and then she gets his little notes in the margins, which I ended up
I
really
love
loving.
that. I
Yeah.
love that.
But, in the original draft, yeah, I think I added, like, 10,000 words, which is unusual for me
Wow.
because I feel like I am always overwriting. I'm not one of those writers that underwrites. I'm always, like, writing too much and then having to scale back. So, no, I think with book 3, I'm in danger that they're going to be like, "You have to cut that, you have to cut that, you have to cut that," but then I'll put it in my newsletter on my website as bonus scenes.
Especially after you read a book and you're waiting for the next one, the
Mhm.
bonus scenes are
Yeah.
great. So I love to have them. When Rhea meets Soren, he warns her to keep her name a secret.
Mhm.
What is the importance of the remnant's name? Or is it something that we will find out in the second one and we
I
can't
think
know?
for the way that he kind of it's not just strictly about the remnants, but it also is when you if you go back to the very beginning, part of why Penn or Scythe before she knows he's Penn, part of the reason he's like kind of so rough with her at the beginning and he's in such a rush is she's like in the grips of fever and she doesn't really understand, but he's basically just like assassinated a whole group of his former soldiers, thrown her on the back of the horse, and he's trying to get north because he knows that there's someone coming after them. And that is something that Rhea doesn't necessarily understand at the time. And I think she only understands looking back. She's like, oh, he was like really trying to get clear. And so Ifnesian's character, he is someone who is very desperate to get his hands on anyone with magic, but especially a remnant who is someone that basically could
An
have
heir.
yes, and someone who could have this limitless resource of magic because in this world, most magical creatures have basically been wiped out. And so he's this like kind of the big bad character who wants magic to possess it for his own. He needs to find sources of magic. And so Rhea going around, Soren is already mad that he hears about them at the inn and he's like, you might as well have, walked through the streets shouting snippets of the prophecy, Penn. Like, what were you thinking? And Penn's like, it's too late. He already saw us on the bridge. So Rhea's already kind of a known entity at that point. And so Soren, I think in that moment when he's talking about her name, he's like kind of trying to impress on her, like, don't go around broadcasting who you are to anybody until you're safe, like behind the walls of Caldera or wherever. And it's important to kind of impress to her that she's a target And I don't think she understands that until she's like kind of kidnapped by Gower's character later
Yeah.
in the book. And then she's like, oh, I let down my guard. I thought I was safe and I'm not.
It's good that you mentioned that scene because that was a point, and I was like, yes, because he captured her. And I was like, oh, is she gonna be the damsel in distress
Mm,
again? And then she makes a hurricane or something, and then
mm,
she slits his throat. And I'm like,
yeah.
what? So I was like, yes.
Yeah.
Because we always want the main characters to take action and to do
Mhm.
something. And she did it. And I was like, good.
Rhea was an interesting character for me to write because I wanted her to be like we were talking about earlier with making her personality kind of mimic her element, like air, you know? I was thinking of her as very like kind of can be gentle and kind of like ethereal like air, but she has this other side to her too. But I think for her character, because she was kind of raised in seclusion and she was like a healer, she's very focused on her morality and being a good person and taking care of people. So it definitely does not come naturally to her to take a life. And it's partly why she and Penn at the beginning like really don't see eye to eye. And she basically calls him a monster because he's just killing everybody
Killing
at the
people.
beginning of the
Yeah.
book. And she's like, you're insane. Like you're totally nuts. And you know, if you think about they have very different backgrounds. They have had very different lives until they come into contact with each other. So of course they're going to butt heads, but I wanted to take that journey with her as a character and show that, you know, she's not necessarily good at anything right away. She's not a fighter. She's not great with her magic. She keeps passing out. There's physical repercussions for her using her power, but there's also like moral repercussions for the changes that she goes through. And as she tests her magic more and as she gets deeper into this world and she starts becoming more like of a badass and saving herself, it's I didn't want it to be that suddenly she just forgot that she was this healer
Mhm.
and she forgot everything that she'd been raised with and all of her, you know, kind of those foundational lessons of her character. I wanted her to struggle in that way and kind of carry that through with her and not lose who she is completely, even though everything else is changing.
Feel like she just like she took action and then she
Mhm.
thought about the consequences.
Yeah.
But she still did it. And she said,
Yeah.
well, you said a life for a life, so I'm going to
Mhm.
take yours
Yes.
in
And she
in
kind of
exchange for mine.
in the moment, she's, like, so in it, and then only afterwards, she's like, "What did I
Yeah.
just do?" And then she feels, like, immensely guilty and kind of ashamed of herself, and she's like, "I'm gonna go hide in the forest for 3 days because
Yeah.
I can't deal with it." Which, like, relatable. I feel like I would
Yeah.
not, like, cope
Yeah.
super well either, but each character kinda has, like, their growth and their arc, and hers is definitely where she starts compared to where she ends at the very end of book 1, she's made progress, but, like, compared book 1 to, like, the end of book 3, it's like, "Oh my god." So, that was my goal for and that's partly also why I really wanted to tell it all through her eyes.
I still wanna meet the Earth Remnant,
Mm,
but I feel like I haven't seen enough of Soren, and I love him. I haven't seen enough of him. He doesn't have a lot of screen time, like,
no.
on the book.
I think it's so funny that so many people love him so much because he's only such
Yeah.
a little snippet, but I love that people are already because he definitely plays a much bigger role in book 2, and you will see more of him.
I think this is more inside our minds because we read so much of the romantasy that we
Mhm,
focused like he is going to be the one. Everything that gets on screen from him, we're like picking it up and like, yeah, that's him. That's
mhm.
so we're like hyping him up.
It's fun to watch all of the different reactions
Yeah.
because, you know, when you write the book, you're not sure how
Yeah.
readers are going to respond, and I know that there are some readers that really like our team Pen, and they're like, "Team Fire," like, I'm all for it, and then
I
there are
still
other
like
people that are
Ben.
totally yeah, Team Water, and I am just like, "I'm just gonna sit here and read all your comments."
Now I don't know if I'm team third person
Oh,
that I
yeah,
don't
you could be
I
Team
don't know
Earth.
who that is,
Wow.
but I'm ready for it. Was there anything in the book that as you were writing the story, you felt like you wanted to give more attention to that or something that just like you didn't plan,
Mhm.
but it came to be a big part of the story, like some character arc?
I think that, by the time Rhea gets to Caldera, she has created this kind of found family with, like, the warriors, and I really wanted her to have a female friendship involved, but I really was surprised by how much I really loved Karis's character who comes
I
in
love
and
her.
how yeah, and how she totally took me by surprise because at first I was like, well, Rhea needs like, she has some like her friends that are the maids like Kita and Tegan, those characters that are there for her and supportive. But I loved the friendship that she develops with Karis, because Karis kind of has, she's like 10 years older than Rhea. She has almost like a big sister kind of
And she
energy.
calls her out.
Yeah, and she calls her out, and it's kind of like a big sister would. And I think Rhea is someone who basically grew up kind of, she had Eli, who was like her father figure, but she was a halfling girl in a human village, basically treated like a freak for most of her life, and kind of told, hide your mark and hide your ears, and kind of, she didn't have a lot of friends, especially not like female friends. So I think when I was writing it, I was surprised how naturally that kind of dynamic came out, even though I hadn't really pictured spending that many pages necessarily with developing her relationship with Karis. And I know like some readers are like, it got so slow and it dragged, but I feel like when I was writing it, it was just the beginning. I was like, action, 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 action. Like there was just like monsters, and then Rhea's like being kidnapped, and there's fire, and they're being chased. And then they finally get to Caldera, and I thought it was really important that like she took a breath, and for the first time the story kind of has the time to take a little bit of a breath and like let the dust settle before then I blew everything up at the end. Yeah, but I really wanted to do that like purposefully with the pacing, and kind of give it like a moment of just like rest. And Karis's character really surprised me that was where the story kind of went in that particular period of the story. But I loved it. It was a good surprise.
It's interesting you say that the second part, it got a little bit slower. But I feel like after 60%, it was all like moving so fast.
Yeah.
So
Well,
it just went really fast to me. Like after that mark of 60%, that's about when she meets Karis. I think
yeah.
about the
When she kind of settles into this new life.
Yeah.
But
I felt like that was fast. I was like, "Oh my god, it's everything's happening at the same time and so
yeah,
many new
chaos.
characters."
I think that, it's so funny because I know some authors are like, never read your reviews, but I love to read reviews. I really find even critical
You're
reviews, I find like there's
brave.
a lot of good points. Like if you can kind of like separate yourself from it and be like, not take it personally. And a lot of this is because I have been doing this 10 years, that I have like a thick skin. Like it's very
I
hard.
could never. I'm
I used to get
too
more.
weak. I would
I used
not
to
be
get
able to
more
do it.
upset. But now I feel like, sometimes I read a bad review and I'm like, huh, points were made, like it's, it can be constructive. But one thing I always find funny is that one person will be like, the plot was like so fast at the beginning, then so slow, and then fast again. And other people will be like, nothing happened for 70% of the book, and then it was crazy at the end. And
It's perception.
everybody has a different perception. Everyone has a different reading speed and
Mhm.
style, and a different amount of description that they like, a different amount of action that they like, even a different amount of like romance versus fantasy. We lump
Mhm.
everything in as romantasy these days because that's like the buzzword. Everything's romantasy. But like for me, I feel like I consider my books like 80% fantasy, 20% romance, and
I'd say the same thing for the
they're
first
still
one.
called romantasy, but I mean, they're more fantasy heavy versus a lot of romantasy titles are the complete opposite. They're
Yes.
80% romance and 20% fantasy.
Yes.
And as the author, you don't really get any say in how they're going to shelve your book. You just type the words.
Are we going to have any spicy scenes in book 2? Like my
Ro-
dog is asking.
the whole trilogy gets spicier as it goes, for sure.
Okay.
So book 1 had no spice. It
No.
had like two kisses. Book
Yeah.
2 is definitely spicier. That's not to say it's like super
Just a
spicy,
little bit more.
more. And then book 3 is, I actually was like rereading it this weekend, and I was like, whoa, this is spicy. But
Good. Don't take it
also,
out, please.
but
If you
like I
ever
said,
take the scenes out, please give
I
it to us afterwards.
I'm like, I've been making them wait for so long, but so I don't know if that will make the final edition. I don't mind writing spicy scenes. I've written them with my contemporary books. It's more just like I have some contemporary books that have one sort of spicy scene, mostly closed door. I have other ones that are like very spicy. And it's more just like, for me, it's never even that I know how spicy something's going to be when I sit down and write. It's like, what's right for these characters at this moment in this story. So to me, I feel like it makes sense, the amount for each book. But yes, long story short, yes, there is
Good.
spice.
That's good.
Gotta have it.
It's just it keeps me going.
Yeah.
It's amazing. I mean, who's complaining about it?
Yeah.
Nobody should complain about spicy scenes ever.
I agree. I agree.
Yeah. If they're complaining, they don't know what's good. So I'm
There's
very
plenty of
glad
just
to know.
regular fantasy out there if
Yeah.
they don't want the spice.
We'll stick to the spicy ones.
Yeah. Yes. So yeah, you can expect spice.
You've been so nice. Every time I reached out, you always responded, and I'm sure you get a lot of DMs and a lot of people who reach out to you. So this is I really want to thank you, and not just to be here with me for my book club, but for your interaction with all the Brazilian community.
I
It's
appreciate you
amazing.
so much. The enthusiasm, like, I can't even imagine if I do come visit, it will be like 10 times as much because I'm already feeling it just through the screen.
Yes,
So thank
you
you for
will.
having me, truly. And thank you for selecting the Wind Weaver. That's like, I'm like very honored.
Thank you so much for being here.
Yes, thank you again for having me. And I'm just so happy that this series is in Brazil. It's awesome. So
Me too. And I can't wait to read This Is Spinner. I can come pick it up in Boston.
Oh yeah, I just drive
2
up,
hours.
be like
I
at
will
my
I
door.
will, like, hi,
Julie,
can I
I know
have
you
an
love the
art?
arts in there.
Can I please have an art? I
Thank
hope we
you.
get to see you in Brazil
I hope so
for the Sis
too.
Spinner.
Yay. Hopefully, I'm crossing my fingers. And thank you again. So nice to meet
Thank
you.
you.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Tô nervosa, gente. Obrigada, gente, por ter assistido a minha entrevista com a Julie Johnson. Vamos torcer pra gente ter mais autores aqui no meu canal também. E vamos crescendo esse amor do Brasil para que elas venham na Bienal e dá atenção pra nós, porque a gente merece. Se inscreve no canal, deixa comentário, curte o vídeo, as coisas que tem que fazer. Me segue também no Instagram e TikTok. Aqui posso falar tudo. Me segue no Instagram, no TikTok. Aí depois na edição a gente põe entendeu? Obrigada por me assistir e vamos junto aí. Beijo.